A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers Chandigarh edition. Now, from today's newspaper, first of all, we have the news on the floods, of course. Besides this, Prime Minister is in France, so France visit is going to be discussed. Then, in the international section, we have something about the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. So India have sought concessions from this body. So this is something that is rarely mentioned. So yes, and it's an important topic. Then again in the world section, last part, there is the news on Shavin culture, which is ancient Peru-based civilization dating 1500 to 500 BC, almost contemporary to the Vedic civilization. Okay, so this was there in Peru. Then in the editorial and opinion section, overall I'm doing most of the articles today, but two articles were of particular interest. So one was on rights from freebies. So this is about, we're getting a lot of governance based topics like rights based welfare approach. We are getting this. Then social accountability law, that is accountability in public service delivery. So governance related topics, GS2 topics are covered. We get some insight over here. Then data protection bill is of course there. So there is a critique by an IIT Delhi professor. So we get some points about the shortcomings of the data protection bill. So this again is a very, very important topic. So this is it. These are the important things. Okay. Now coming to the news. So I'm going to overlook the flood-based news first of all. So you just focus on the governance side, the issues that people are facing overall, right? Now moving on. India-France ties are strong. Looking forward to roadmap for the next 25 years. First of all, Indian Prime Minister is in France, right? Now, the reference of 25 years comes from the thing that India and France have a strategic partnership. That is, it is above bilateral partnership, that is relationship between the two countries. So strategic means deepening of the relationship between the two countries and alignment of goals for strategic reasons. So Indo-France strategic partnership has already been 25 years. So looking forward to the next 25 years. That's all. Okay. Now, since Indian Prime Minister is there, they'll be talking on a number of issues, mainly climate change, defense, starting with defense actually, Indo-Pacific region. So some issues they are going to discuss. Now, defense is obviously a key priority between India and France. So Rafale 26 we are interested, and the Scorpion submarines. Scorpion submarines are part of India's Project 75, and in India, Scorpion subs are known as Kalavari submarines. Okay. Now from the Indian side, fine, it is first of all we have Indians in France, but from the Indian side also we have to okay that yes, we want these jets, we want these submarines. So on the Indian side we have the Defense Acquisition Council, which is headed by the Defense Minister. I keep saying this. So it is headed by the Defense Minister, 3 army chiefs, Army, Air Force, Navy, defense chiefs, plus some bureaucrats. And the idea is to prioritize and proper plan the defense acquisition. So they have okayed the purchase of marine version of Rafale jets, 26 Rafale jets, and the 3 Scorpion submarines. Moving on, same thing is repeated. So we'll just scroll further. So you can see some issues, administrative issues, etc., with reference to the floods. Red flags ignored. Jalandhar floods was a man-made disaster waiting to happen. Floods. Are floods natural disasters or man-made disasters? Obviously, floods happen because of the wrath of the nature, that's for sure. But then settlements, settling into the, flood prone areas, or encroaching into the wetlands, improper land use policy. So this accentuates the problem. And it is the marginalized communities who are more vulnerable over here. Now, in this context, it is saying that we already had data from previous years that such floods of such disastrous effect may happen, but the authorities were silent on this thing. They didn't take much action. So again, proactive approach is required. Many a times we see the state authorities are uh, taking a knee-jerk reaction. They are not proactive in their approach. So yesterday we had an opinion on the same. Okay. So just scrolling. Basically, there is something about G20. So yes. So need to join forces to tackle cyber terror. So Amit Shah, the Home Minister, is talking about the cyber security framework, and presume it is with reference to G20 member nations to act. So it's calling on G20 to work on the issue of cyber terror. Now, with reference to cyber terror, he is mentioning some of the things concerning cyber, and then I will discuss the questions. Previous year's questions asked in memes. So he's talking about different types of cyber crimes like ransomware. So there is ransomware. Ransomware means your computer will be locked and you have to pay a ransom. Like if somebody kidnaps you, the person will be released only when you pay a ransom. Then other things are there like phishing, etc. So other crimes are there. Then the issues regarding fake news, hate speech on internet, misinformation campaign. So misinformation is normally used to incite violence, criminalization, etc. So that is there. So these are again issues. Then radicalization of youth is also one of the concerns that we can take up from mains perspective. Radicalization means some person is anyways short-tempered, right? So if that person is radicalized by feeding him content, and eventually that person moves to extremism, to terrorism. So this is again a theme that we can work. So I prepared a mock question for one of the institutes. So there I had discussed this issue. Okay, so some issues I have mentioned over here. Besides this, he's also saying that there is critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure nowadays is dependent on the IT, and the terrorists or the other world countries may use it against you. Adverse countries may use it against you. So critical infrastructure. Now this includes almost everything which is of importance to a nation. Transportation network, nuclear power plants or thermal power plants also, banking system, right? Anything. So anything is dependent on IT. So this can be attacked by an adverse group, be it a country, be it a non-state actor. So these are some of the cyber issues which they say that Home Minister is saying that the world countries should work on it. Now, please look at this issue over here. The cyber security, the previous year questions, I'm referring to the Byju's website. Questions are till 2021. And you will notice that every year a question is asked on cyber security. So we'll read this. Keeping in view India's internal security, analyze the impact of cross-border cyber attacks, discuss defensive measures against these sophisticated attacks. So cyber attacks and defensive measures. Second type of question is discuss different types of cyber crimes and measures required to be taken to fight against the menace. Then some initiatives that authorities have taken. For example, in Kerala, there is the Cyber Dome project and how it can be useful in controlling internet crimes in India. Then the data protection bill that we keep talking about. So on that also question was asked in 2018. Linking data security with cyber crimes. Again, discuss the potential threats of cyber attack and security framework to prevent it. So the same thing is there, basically cyber attack, defensive measures, different types of cyber crimes, and what is the state doing to address it. So this is the underlying theme. Every year it is being asked. So this must be prepared at. So 2-3 questions if you prepare on cyber, I think you are fine. So this was I wanted to discuss. Now there is a news maybe for prelims, artificial sweetener, aspartame. So WHO was conducting studies on it, that is it safe to use or not, aspartame chemical, which is an artificial sweetener. So there were two studies, two independent study. One study said that this is possibly carcinogenic. Carcinogenic means it may cause cancer to humans. And the other said that there is no conclusive evidence that this is carcinogenic. Again, no conclusive evidence. Okay. So study was done. They found association. First study who said it is carcinogenic, they found association with risk of liver cancer. Then study on mice and rats showed higher incidence of tumors in mice and rats. Right. Okay. So this was it. The other study of course said that it's nothing conclusive. Now moving on to the editorial and the opinion page. So this article I'm not doing. Uniform Civil Code, intent matters. Moving on to Moon with Love. That this is about Chandrayaan 3. So very quickly, what is the Chandrayaan mission? Chandrayaan mission is to have a safe, soft landing on the south pole of the moon. So this is the first time an attempt is being made to land on the poles. Other countries have also landed, but it is on the equator side. So it is on the equator side of the moon. So now soft landing on the moon, and also on this will happen to be the dark side of the moon. That is the one that is not facing the earth. So yeah, so August 23, we expect this landing attempt will take place. Now, as Chandrayaan 3 takes off, a nation holds its breath, but moon landing is only a stepping stone to bigger dreams. So I have mentioned this in subsequent bigger dreams or the initiatives that ISRO is going to take. So the soft landing on moon is a stepping stone to have a man on moon. So landing a man on the moons, manned mission to moon. Obviously, first you are able to land a rover, then we will risk it with an astronaut. So the mission name is Gaganyaan. Okay, so crewed orbital spacecraft. So that is there. Second, I'm having doubts if it is man on moon, but having a man on space. Man on moon is more about Artemis program actually. Artemis program of the US. So they'll be sending 3 people, and one of them would be of color, and other would be women. Right? So it's out of 3, 1 of color and 1 woman. And India has signed the Artemis agreement with the Gaganyaan, so this US may help us in this initiative in this quest. Then we are sending a mission to Sun, which we already have actually, Aditya space probe. So mission to Sun and Venus. Then coming to the next article, this is about monetary policy, a balancing act. Monetary policy has 2 goals. It has to balance between inflation and growth. So if there is the industry etc. requires more money supply, is cheap credit. So to have growth plus more money in the economy also means greater demand, but greater demand may result in inflation. So they have to balance between the two. So at the moment there is this monetary policy committee as part of the RBI, which decides the monetary policy, the interest rates, etc. So they have kept this simple. They have said that we will just target the inflation, which is at 4 plus minus 2%. So this is we are going to basically focusing on the inflation, but it goes without saying that they also prioritize the economic growth. Now, at the present, the CPI data was released. It was in yesterday's newspaper, CPI combined, and this was at 4.8%, well within the limits. But RBI may not reduce the interest rates. It will be status quo on interest rate. It will keep the interest rates as it is. Presently, RBI is having a hawkish look on the interest rates. It is very mindful of the inflation levels. So why will RBI not change it? So three reasons are given below. So one is the fading base effect. Presently, the inflation levels are within limits because prices are high, but the base effect is the saving grace. So because of this, the inflation is seen at 4.8%, but actually the inflation is much more. So previous year's inflation was high, so therefore this year's seems to be within limits. Next is there are concerns associated with food prices, especially the supply of food is hampered because of the nature of monsoon, right? So northwestern has so much of monsoon. In the eastern and the southern parts, we are into the red area where drought-like situations are there. We fear the concerns associated with the pulse prices. The window of pulse sowing is very limited. Plus, no very limited rains have taken place in the central India. So pulse farming may get affected. So pulse is an important part of India's food cycle. Tomato prices are already very, very high. Right, so food inflation is a risk. Plus El Nino year, so maybe July there is a lot of rains, but subsequent months may not have good rains. So food inflation may go up. And there may also be future supply side issues with reference to food supplies. Okay, so this was about the Balancing Act. Next, we have the Bastille Day Climate Pledge. So India and France, obviously, we're talking about the France now, Bastille. So India and France are working together on the issue of climate change also. And one of the things with the climate is Arctic, the Arctic region. Let me show you the Arctic. Yes, the Arctic region. So we are concerned, both countries are concerned with this thing because the Arctics are melting, and with the melting of Arctics, it may affect the pattern of pressure winds. Right. So Arctic is cold and therefore it is a high pressure area, but with the melting, the high pressure may not be so high. So it may affect the overall distribution of planetary winds and affect the overall the weather systems across the world. So both countries are concerned. Now we do not know what will be the effect of the melting of the Arctic. So we need to both work together on this Arctic teleconnections. That is what will be the impact on Arctic on our weather systems, etc. Teleconnection. So that is there. Then there is a mention of a body known as Heads of State Coalition for the Arctic Protection. So we are to, so there is announcement will take place. So I couldn't find much on this body over here. So body for the protection of the Arctic. So basically these two things are there with reference to the Arctic. Then we get a very important point with reference to the melting of Arctic. So Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. And last 7 years were region's 7 warmest on record. So this is something that you can take note of, especially for quoting it in your mains answer, that the Arctic is warming 4 times faster. If there is some question on extreme weather events, there you can write it down. Now talking about Arctic, there is obviously there is Arctic Council. 2014-2015 prelims question was also asked with reference to the Arctic Council countries. So Arctic Council is an high level intergovernmental body, right? And India is not a member because India is not an Arctic country, and likewise France is not a member, but we are observer countries. We are observer nations. So this is about the Arctic. So it's about the interest of the Arctic. But what I feel, and what many environmentalists feel, it is how Arctic, when the melting takes place, how the resources of the Arctics will be shared amongst the countries. That's the more focus. Next is the opinions. So separate rights from freebies. So these two I mentioned are important. So let us do this one, separate rights from freebies. Okay. Rajasthan government's promise of bringing in minimum income guarantee law is welcome. Next, it must enact the promised accountability law. So there are three things over here. So one is a rights-based approach to welfare rather than freebies-based approach. It's rights-based and freebies-based. The second thing is minimum income guarantee law, and the third is accountability law. Okay. Now, what is this rights-based welfare approach? So let us do this in sequence only. So one is the freebies, that we will give you ration at 1 rupee, ration at 2 rupees. That is freebies, or the Revdi terminology which was used by the Prime Minister. A rights-based welfare approach goes beyond this. It says that welfare is a legal right. Welfare, well-being of the citizens is a right, and the government must ensure that the right is fulfilled. So now what is happening is that earlier the government was saying, okay, they allotted so many grains, they may allot so many houses, but rights-based approach says that this is your obligation. This has to be done. This is the citizen's right. The freebies based is more of the government's charity actually, while here it is a matter of right. It's a legal obligation which has to be fulfilled. So government has to ensure that whatever commitments are done, it has to be met. Otherwise, there may be a legal claim on the same. So it's a legal claim, not mere entitlement. And one more thing is that it also involves an element of making people aware of their rights. And in this case, the right to welfare. Now coming to the rights-based approach, we can see a lot of things. There is a shift over here, right? Like right to education is there, a right to livelihood has been mentioned in your Nareka Act. So right to information act. So again, that creates an obligation on the state that if somebody asks information, that has to be provided. Otherwise, one can go to the courts. So main difference is this. Now coming to the Minimum Guarantee Act, Minimum Guarantee Law, which Rajasthan government is bringing. So this is part of the rights-based approach. In this, what is happening is the pension amount is getting increased rupees 1,000 per month to 50, and every year 15% increase will take place. In Narega, which provides for rural employment to unskilled for manual labor work. So rural employment for manual labor. So additional 25 days would be provided for this. Then urban employment is also guaranteed. This is new. Urban employment for 125 days. So these will be provided under the minimum income guarantee. Now this is based on the rights-based approach. Now that's fine, rights-based approach, but rights-based approach will only work if there is an accountability law also. Accountability law means that the public service delivery, the government's work is, one of the works is public service delivery. So public service delivery is done in a time-bound manner within fixed timelines. We know who is the person concerned, official concerned, right? So that the person is answerable for its acts of commission and omission. So that is the accountability. So several states, not just Rajasthan, they promised in the previous elections that took place that they will bring in a social security law, which they didn't do it, and there is a protest going on by the pressure groups in Rajasthan. SR Abhiyan and civil society groups continue their dharma for rights-based, rights-based laws as well as the accountability laws. So it's about having timelines of public service delivery, accountability of officials, and transparency. Now, this is not something new. There are states like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, etc., where there are laws on public service delivery. that these have to be done within the same timelines. If it is not done, reasons have to be stipulated within the timelines. So all that. Next is a critique on the data protection law. So hiding behind consent, the title. So data protection law, data protection bill that is coming, obviously it is about how the data will be collected, how it will be processed, what will be the obligation of the data fiduciaries, that is companies like Gmail, social media accounts, etc., who take data from you. Now the author is saying that this bill is basically, it's a very critical remark, please you don't write it. Its idea is to facilitate data collection and processing by the government rather than address concerns of data protection. The way it is designed, it is facilitating data collection and its use rather than data protection and the interest of the consumer. So why is he saying that? So that's the main focus. So first of all, it provides for that proposed act will allow any purpose, data for any purpose which is not expressly forbidden by law. So there are, let's say, some areas where restrictions are there, but beyond this, for any purpose, the data can be taken. Now he says that this goes beyond the principles of determination for which data can be taken, and it is based on the threefold test, that is legality, legitimacy, and proportionality. This is for actually anything, privacy, etc., anything. So legality means data, in this context, data restrictions on the basis of law, so expressly forbidden by law. So those, for that purpose, data cannot be taken. So law. Legitimacy means fair use, right? Reasonableness, legitimacy. For example, if we're talking about privacy versus public safety, so public safety will take priority. For that, data may be allowed to be taken or collected. Then proportionality. Proportionality means to what extent the state authorities, etc., can dilute the laws, right? So least intrusive with reference to the rights. So what are the rights and to what extent they can take the data? So proportionality, what is the extent of the danger? What is the extent of the urgency that for which the data is required? So proportionality. So it has to be seen with respect to the right to privacy. So the threefold test is mentioned. Besides this, it says that if consent is given, the data can be used. So there is over dependence on consent. Now we all know that the social media accounts or anything, there is hardly any choice. Either you take the service or you give consent. So consent is often a false choice. You do hardly ever have a choice. So this is a concern. So there is over dependence on this thing. So this is a good line. Effective data protection requires accountability based approach rather than consent based framework. So nowadays it's showcasing consent based framework rather than an accountability based approach. Okay. Besides this, standards of anonymization, encryption, and access controls have not been defined. So these are relegated to subordinate regulations. So this is again a problem. So encryption, access control, again, these are how data is protected as encryption. Access control is who can take the data. So this parliament is relegating this to subordinate regulations. That is, executive can make laws. So we can say delegated legislations. Okay. Next is the opinion, mapping the spending. So here we are basically talking about states. It is saying that the states are in much better position to undertake capital expenditure. So just this fact, the fiscal deficit of the state, that is the gap between expenditure and revenues, it has improved. So it's from 8.2 trillions, the deficit combined for the states has improved to 6.6 trillion, or in percentage term, from 4.1% to 2.6% of the gross state domestic product. So the states have more capital now to engage in capital expenditure. Coming to the international section. So yeah, Russia's military leadership betrayed. So this is just a criticism of an army general of Russia, that military leadership has not fulfilled its task. It has not helped the troops on the ground. China publishes interim rules for generative AI. So a soft approach is being used. Now, what is generative AI? So generative AI is something like Chat GPT, etc. So it's a type of artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images. You must have seen images of Ramayana, Ram, Sita, gods. Right? Those images are being used, or so images or other social media in response to prompts. So this is generative AI. Nowadays, there's this a young person is seen as an elderly person also. So such things are also part of generative AI. US-China meeting is taking place between Blinken and Wang to manage US-China competition. This means everything, spying, trade, every single aspect is covered. Excavators explore 3,000-year-old sealed corridor of Peru temple. Okay, so we're talking about the ancient Shavan culture. This is in Peru. Peru is in South America. You must have heard about the El Nino effect. It starts from Peru and the Ecuador region. Right, so you can see on the western side of South America, and here we have the Andes Mountains. Okay, so this civilization is 3,000 years ago, which is 1500 to 500 BC. Right, so 1500 to 500 BC, which is same as the Vedic civilization in India's case. Now these people were farming communities, so this was not an urban civilization, it was rural in nature, just like the Vedic people. So they were like this, but we have images of temple also that were built. With the Vedic people, we don't find temples as such. In the later part, we see emergence of proto-urban civilization. That is, rudimentary urban settlements can be seen, same as the case with India. Now, this site, Chevan de Hontar, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Next is India weighs better market access to join IPEF trade pillar, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Okay, so first of all, what is the IPEF? So IPEF is a 14-nation trade bloc led by the US. So 14-nation trade bloc led by the US, and it is comprising of the Indo-Pacific region. And it is targeted at China also. So China is not part of this framework over here. Okay, so 14-nation trade bloc. Now this IPEF is based on a 4-pillar structure. So 4-pillar structure are there. Pillar 1 is about trade. Second is on supply chains. Third is on clean economy, and fourth is on fair economy. So there is a 4-pillar structure. India has signed pillar number 2, 3, and 4, but not signed pillar number 1. Pillar number 1 concerns trade. So India did not join it because with reference to trade, India was reluctant that signing it would mean India would have to make regulations on domestic agriculture, maybe stop subsidies on farming like MSP, etc. So domestic agricultural, labor, and digital sectors, which India was uncomfortable with, and therefore India did not sign the first pillar. But obviously, this is an important trade bloc comprising of 40% of the world's GDP and 28% of world's trade in goods. So India wants greater market access. Now, for that, India also would have to give market access to these countries, right? So India is negotiating on the same so that India can sign pillar number one. Previously, India did not sign the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership (RCEP), which was including US, which was excluding US but including China. This was a China-led initiative covering China, Asian countries. India was part of discussions, Japan, etc. So they were there. And this is an interview of the Revenue Secretary of India, and he's saying that we will bring in an amendment to the GST law. So GST law would be amended, but the taxes, the decision that was made by the GST Council is applicable already. Now here he was asked about the high taxes on the online gaming. So he made one important distinction. He said there is one type of game which you give a subscription, you play and you leave for entertainment purpose. So that is taxed at 18%, and other is which has an element of betting, Dream 11, etc. So this will be at 28%. Now, will this affect the demand? The secretary said it depends on the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand means if the price increases, to what extent the demand would remain constant. The demand will not get affected. So that is price elasticity of demand. The increase in price does not affect demand. That is price elasticity. So, yes, this is it actually. Now we come to the explained section. Today I'm not doing it. So we have the French and the current reasons for the market rally. So that's it. So this was it from today's newspaper. Thank you for streaming into our channel.